From his deep and earnest appreciation for the entire superhero genre, to his willingness to change things up while adapting comics for the big screen, here's how James Gunn has managed to become an iconic filmmaker. And for starters, I think we should give the guy credit for being an OG fan. James Gunn has loved these characters ever since he was a little kid. I'm not saying you need to be a fan in order to make good superhero movies, but it has to come in handy in some way, shape, or form. Gunn isn't just some guy trying to make a living, and he doesn't really care if his movies end up being blockbusters or not. Just take a look at the Suicide Squad, for example. He's been reading those comics pretty much his entire life, and he's not just a casual fan either. Rather, Gunn tends to love stories that depict anti-heroes, because they involve characters that haven't lived very good lives, but they manage to rise above it all and choose to fight for good. That's something special, which is why Gunn appreciates those kind of stories. However, simply enjoying comic books isn't enough to make you a good director. If that were the case, I'd practically be Steven Spielberg by this point. There's way more that Gunn has to offer, like his willingness to break the mold. It takes a lot of bravery to go against the grain. Most directors just shut up and do as they're told, and I don't blame them. But Gunn's clearly cut from a different kind of cloth. Again, the Suicide Squad is one of the best examples of this.
This is suicide.
Well, that's kind of our thing.
As it's one of the few movies from the DCU that have something humorous to offer. Gunn's not just about humor, though. He takes a look at what studios have been doing in the past and tries to change anything that he feels isn't working. Even Guardians of the Galaxy wasn't an exact match to the MCU formula. It had big action set pieces, along with plenty of wisecracks and one-liners. But even so, the characters were depicted as being charming and quirky, which is actually a major change from what they're like in the comics. If Guardians of the Galaxy was directed by anyone else, I imagine we'd have gotten a very different kind of film, cause Gunn's never afraid to add his own personality to his work. And that's just not something we get to see that often in the MCU. Every film just seems like a rehash of the same old formula. It's thanks to Gunn that people didn't get bored with the franchise ages ago. And what's more, he doesn't stick to the comics like a blind fanboy. The guy's not afraid to make the hard choices and change things that don't work. Of course, it can be easy for stuff like that to get out of hand. Zack Snyder is a prime example of how messy it can be if the changes don't make sense. But that's just the thing that makes Gunn such a legend. Any changes he decides to incorporate are earned. They make sense in the wider universe that the story is set in, and none of them feel like they were forced in just for the sake of it. I think Peacemaker is where this approach worked best, and there are countless fans and critics out there that agree with me, cause in the comics, Peacemaker is a crazed vigilante.
That guy's a clown.
But there's something about him that's sad.
Is he a target in sight?
Peacemaker, take him out.
Even the kids?
Yes!
He's actually haunted by the ghosts of the people he killed, but you wouldn't know that based solely off of the series Gunn directed. He turns Peacemaker into a bit of a goofball.
Ariana Grande or Drake?
What?
Brad Pitt or Payne Stewart or Doug the Pug? Khloe Kardashian, the Red Tiger from Voltron?
And a lovable one at that. John Cena does a great job of running with that. I have a feeling that Gunn intentionally played to the actor's strengths. It's not to say that the character is completely altered from the source material. Gunn addresses some of the racist undertones of his upbringing. He doesn't make any excuses for him. Instead, he depicts him as a flawed character who's just trying to do his best. And that gives Peacemaker a character arc that's unique but relevant. It's even more impressive when you consider how many directors tried to copy his style. And Gunn's pretty quick to criticize them for doing so poorly. He's spoken out about how badly other directors handle superhero movies, which makes perfect sense if you think about it. Cause you've gotta remember, this is a guy who's been obsessed with superheroes for decades, so he's obviously not gonna tolerate it if somebody does a bad job. Especially if the director in question has the talent to actually pull it off. Gunn's recent comments about Thor: Love and Thunder show how irritated he can get. I fully support all of the criticism here. Don't get me wrong, Taika Waititi is a phenomenal director. He's made some of the best movies in the MCU canon. But even so, his second attempt at a Thor movie really missed the mark. The comedy aspect was obviously gonna be there, but I think it's fair to say that he went way overboard. Gunn manages to find a balance between comedy and action. His movies are funny, but they're not stuffed with joke after joke. The humor is used to break the tension once in a while, instead of serving as a crutch that the whole film relies on. If you need any more proof about how much of a game changer he is, you've just gotta check out what he said when the Suicide Squad was announced. Gunn took on the project with a mission to change the genre forever. He already had some solid films under his belt. Guardians of the Galaxy proved that Gunn was a talented director, arguably one of the best in the MCU. So when the news broke out that he was gonna direct a new Suicide Squad movie, I actually felt hopeful, cause the first one was downright awful. At first, I was kinda annoyed that the movie was even getting made. Even the name seemed lazy. But Gunn absolutely blew my mind, exceeding all of my expectations, and making me excited for the future of the DCU for the very first time. When he was interviewed after the movie was announced, he was quick to point out something that all of us have been thinking. Superhero movies have started to get really boring. It was like we were watching the same film on repeat, except with different actors in the roles. Gunn was looking to change all that, and I think all of us can agree. He was successful in his mission. So it's pretty easy to see why Gunn deserves to be called the GOAT superhero film director. But it's not just his skills and passions that set him apart. Gunn always takes the initiative to put the fans in their place. That might sound like a bad thing, cause directors are supposed to work for the fans, not against them. But you've gotta realize, fans can sometimes take things a tad too far. Like when Gunn cast Shikuti Iwuji as the villain in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. A few fans got undeniably racist in his Instagram comments. Gunn's not the kind of guy to suffer fools. So he was quick to point out just how much of an idiot these fans were being. And I for one give him my full support there. Racism is just not okay. And Gunn didn't just use facts and logic here either. He tore the fan apart, pointing out the stupidity of his statements, and giving his diehard supporters even more to cheer him on for. Gunn doesn't just make a decision, he stands by it, and defends it every chance he gets. Now that he's going to be charting the course for a new DCU, we can all breathe a sigh of relief, cause the franchise finally seems like it's in good hands. That's all you need to know about why James Gunn is a legendary director.